How we doing today? IB Countdown to Kickoff is up and rolling along with, it's three of us today, along with Vince DiDario and Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. How are you guys doing this morning?
Got the game day whites on, ready to go.
Yeah, baby.
Because ever since I've been wearing the game day whites, Notre Dame's been undefeated. So I got to stick with it because what I wear clearly matters to the outcome of the game. So let's go.
I was going to say, Vince looks pretty milky in his all white over there. Pretty good look.
Washes me out. It's great.
It's a different kind of vibe today, going from number 4 Clemson at home, 7 p.m. to a new Navy game on the road against the triple option. It's a completely different beast, and that's, I think, going to be the biggest question for today, right? Like the consistency of, do they come out and do what they're supposed to?
That's a big question to me, the hangover factor, and we'll get to that over the course of this show. But, it's like we're all up. I guess Vince and I are used to doing this at 10 a.m., and everyone who joins us live is used to doing this. I mean, we've got Brent out in California and whoever else is out there in the West Coast time zone. They're used to getting up really early. But the team pulled it off a couple of weeks ago against Syracuse.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll see. Want to make sure and say happy Veterans Day weekend. Of course, yesterday, Veterans Day, and I guess, turned out kind of fitting that Notre Dame and Navy.
This guy, veteran. Happy Veterans Day, Sean.
Well, and I don't want to, and thank you. I don't want to start off on a down note, but I did want to give a shout to Fred Hickman, who passed away this week. And Fred Hickman was actually a big part of my military experience when I was in Germany, because they had something called the Armed Forces Network. And it was basically, it's like we had one channel and, so they would rotate. Sometimes we'd get like some network stuff, we'd get network sports, but the place we got, like our national sports, if you were following college football, the NFL, the NBA, baseball, we didn't get ESPN over there on Armed Forces Network. We got CNN Sports, and Fred Hickman, Nick Charles, Van Earl Wright with the deep tones. I don't know if you remember any of those guys, Vince, but that's what we got over there. So and Hannah Storm was a part of that as well. So that was a big part of our Armed Forces Network experience, was getting that CNN Sports feed, and Fred Hickman was a big part of that. So rest in peace to Fred on this Veterans Day weekend. I couldn't sleep last night, and I was up watching the Bill McCartney 30 for 30 on ESPN. And, of course, I got sucked in watching it, and I had to go right up to the point where Colorado was playing Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl in 1990, and the bogus clipping call on the Rocket Ismail punt return for a touchdown that leads to Colorado National Championship. But man, Reggie Brooks out there, saw him flying around in number 40, and of course Rocket and all those guys. So that was something. By the way, I didn't even mention, I've got a little bit different backdrop. I'm in St. Louis, Missouri today because Notre Dame women's basketball is playing Cal in the first ever City Shamrock Classic here in St. Louis. And that game is going to tip off at 4:00 Eastern time. I'll, of course, have the call on the Notre Dame radio network, but it's going to be televised on NBC. First ever women's basketball game of any kind televised on NBC at 4:00 this afternoon. So when you're done with Notre Dame football, you can flip over. They're going to have that. This is sort of, like the women's basketball version of the Shamrock series. I don't know if they're going to make this a regular thing, but it's, kind of along those lines. The City Shamrock Classic with Niele Ivey back here in St. Louis. This is her hometown, and she got to go back to her old high school yesterday, and the team, and they did all kinds of stuff around that. And this is where Notre Dame won its first national championship in 2001 when she was the starting point guard.
Yeah.
And this is the first time Notre Dame has been back here in St. Louis since then. So it's a pretty cool little event they're putting on today. You want to talk some football, though?
Well, you got to answer this question first.
No, you won't hear me on NBC. It will be Zora Stevenson, who is the sideline reporter during Notre Dame football games on NBC. Zora is going to have the call, and I believe it is LaChina Robinson who will be doing the color analysis. If you go to UND.com, go to the women's schedule page, and click on the listen. You can listen, if you really want to, listen to me. Otherwise, just watch it on NBC. Thanks, Vince.
No
Vince
problem.
is my fan.
Number 1 fan, right? Well, I guess I'll go number 2 behind Jesse, but I'll be number 2. I'm okay.
That's right. All right. Mike says he'll be watching and listening. So thanks to Mike. All right.
There we go. See?
How about some football? Notre Dame coming off that big win over Clemson last week. Vince, I'll start with you, then we'll go to Jesse. What's the biggest thing you guys learned in Notre Dame's win last week?
That they can rise to the occasion and just absolutely dominate a team. And on top of that, finish a game. We haven't seen Notre Dame finish a game in a really, really long time when they're in control. You know, a lot of times they just take their foot off the gas, run the ball, blah, blah, boring. And this time they actually went for the jugular. And I think that says a lot about not only this team, but it says a lot about Marcus Freeman and who he is and how he sees this program moving forward. I want to root for a team that when they're the best team on the field, that they prove it all the way to the whistle. And I'm not saying you need to run up the score on anybody, because there's a fine line between running up the score and proving you're the best team on the field. And Notre Dame was the best team on the field that night, and they dominated, and they put the nail in the coffin at the end. They weren't just going to run out the clock and all that. They was like, look, we're the best team. Boom, here's another touchdown just because. And I love that. And it's not running up the score. It's not unsportsmanlike. It is a team showing their dominance, and Notre Dame hasn't done that in the last 10 to 15 years. So I love that, and I hope that continues.
Yeah, so a lot of the things I learned were very similar to some of the things that Vince just said there. But the biggest thing that I learned was Notre Dame has the ability or the capability to dominate teams on the ground if they need to. And they don't need to throw the ball a lot. And that's fine because of, what their offense is built around, the three-headed monster at running back that I like to call. So they can dominate on the run in the run game, and they didn't need to throw the ball, and they just completely took control and had a mentality, and they executed exactly what they wanted to do. And I think that they can execute their will like this going forward more and more. I don't think that there needs to be a huge pressure on having this elite pass game. I just think the pass game needs to complement the rush game, when it needs to. And I think that we should continue to see more of that. Tommy Rees needed to hammer his run game until it gets stopped, essentially. And I think they have the ability to continuously run like this over and over.
Yeah, I mean, combinations of what you guys said. And before I continue, I should remind you, please smash that like button if you would, if you're watching on YouTube. And of course, comment, rate, review, all that good kind of stuff. There was actually a comment on one of our YouTube videos the other day that I'll use in rapid fire next week. I thought it was interesting. It was worthy. So it's interesting because, like I've sat here and I've, been beating the drum about 21 personnel and 2 backs and all this stuff. They had great success the 3 or 4 times that they used it. Amazing. And I'm not going to get hung up on that. But, we were kind of talking a few weeks back. It's like, where did all this go? Why aren't they doing some of these different things? And one of the things that Tommy Rees did against tendency. And, that was a big part of why they were able to be successful in that game. So, again, like I kind of took some crap, like when you look at some of the comments that our videos get after the fact on YouTube, it's like, oh, sure, like he's really just not showing this stuff so he can save it for Clemson. Well, I don't know if he was completely saving it for Clemson, but again, he went against tendency. He did a lot of different things that he didn't do.
He hasn't done all year.
No, that's exactly right. So, like now we've got Dan Orlovsky out there, and we'll talk about that here in a minute, pumping on Tommy Rees, and Dan is doing the game again today. So we learned that they can play bully ball for sure, and that they could bully a really good defensive team. We learned that they could go for the kill shot, like I think you were talking about, Fitz, and I love that. Like because it wasn't even running up the score. It was just we're going to finish this thing. We're going to keep our foot on the pedal. We're not going to downshift like BK used to do. We're going to keep going. We're going to call this pass. The head coach is going to call for that pass from the sideline when they didn't have to. They could have just, again, kept kind of keeping that in first gear and grinded it down, grind out a few more yards, grind out a few more seconds off the clock, and probably ultimately punch that thing into the end zone, or otherwise just settle for a field goal that you really didn't need anyway. But They kept the foot on the gas from start to finish. And that's what I love. That's like, if we're talking about a shift in mentality, that's a big shift in mentality to me.
Yep. No doubt about it.
I'll play the other side of it, because Truth Hurts said this. He said he learned Clemson had a bad day and a bad plan. He said he didn't learn anything on Notre Dame till they continue to show that play. And I mean, it is a fair point, because they do have to show what is this team right now. It is still an inconsistent football team until we see true consistency when you go from a ranked team to an unranked team like they're going to see today.
Go ahead, Jess. I know you want to say something to this.
Yeah, this has to be, it's all good and dandy. We've seen them beat the teams, the ranked teams, obviously not to the dominating fashion or as high caliber as Clemson, but that's the biggest question is, how do they come off of these trapdoor games, essentially, knowing that, this you have Navy and Boston College, and then USC obviously ramping back up to end your season. So that has to be, this is the biggest theme or question that's traveled throughout the entire season, I think, is what frustrated most of us, because you can make the case if Notre Dame plays like this the whole season, this is a one-loss team going into the last 3 games of their schedule, and we're talking about, much more bigger picture things. And so it's frustrating to see, but at the same time, you're glad to kind of see that shift, finally, that permanent shift. And today has to kind of, set the tone or set the trend if this is actually going to continue to go forward, or if they're going to take a step back. You just want to keep seeing them take step forward, and no more steps back. I think there's, especially at this point in the season, 9 games in, there's really no more excuses for steps back after the performance that you just had against Clemson. I think you really set the bar for yourself high now, and you have to continue to live up to the expectations. And I think that had to be kind of the challenging message this week, is we need to continue to live up to, our expectations and goals for these last 3 games.
263 total rushing yards, 5.6 yards per carry, the most Clemson allowed in 5 years, going back to when Lamar Jackson was the quarterback at Louisville still. And of course, Estime goes for 104, Diggs 114, Chris Tyree. We saw more from him, again, like, when was Chris Tyree most successful? When they had 2 backs out there. I mean, 2 big plays, and then they went away from that and they started kind of, it's like, I get it. The game plan was to pound between the tackles. You do more of that with Estime and Diggs, but if you have 2 guys on the field and you've got to defend both the perimeter and inside with Tyree and another back out there, makes a big difference. But,
it's going to be tough.
Go ahead, it's gonna be, no, that's okay. No, it's going to be very Chris Tyree right now is one of your best receivers. I mean, let's be honest. He's probably your best slot receiver. He's your best, prototypical slot receiver, I should say. He's small, he's fast, he can get in and out of his breaks. He's got good hands, he's good in space. That's your prototypical slot receiver. Now, Jaden Thomas is a good slot receiver, but he's different. You got to use him different. He's a bigger body. He can do some different things. He can still be effective in the slot. But Chris Tyree is your best slot receiver right now. You've got to use him. Whether he's coming out of the backfield, whether he's lining up in the slot or whatever, you need to use him in the passing game. You talk about, we're obviously going to talk about Navy moving forward here, but Navy's one of the worst pass defenses in the country. One of the ways to exploit that is using Chris Tyree in the 2-back set.
Yes.
Period. It's not that complicated. Use this man. He can do some good things.
You're absolutely right. For one, he is more, especially with his size. Like when you think of what a slot receiver is, like whether it's, Hunter Renfrow or, Julian Edelman, those kind of guys, Wes Welker, they all tend to be smaller, undersized, quick twitch, kind of twitchy, quickie kind of guys who can get lost in space out there around the middle as well as downfield. But like when you think about, now we're still dealing with this year, but I was thinking about Jadarian Price earlier this year. It's like Jadarian Price tore his Achilles, back in June. He's going to be back in the mix last year. And he was weird. I think we were talking about what the group looks like next year. Like the role it would seem like, because I don't think Chris Tyree is going to get drafted this year and he's still got another year. It would seem like the role for him, again, especially when you look at the state of the wide receiver room and you got another receiver leaving, that going forward, being a slot receiver is probably Chris Tyree's, like what he can really provide for this team, considering you have Diggs and Estime, and then you're going to get Price back again next year.
Sure. And you can you can still list him as a running back. That's fine. I mean, it's semantics, to be honest with you. It's like, but you can put him in motion. You can line him up in the slot, bring him back to the backfield, start him in the backfield, put him in the slot, motion him all the way to the outside and burn a linebacker. I mean, there's a lot of different things you can do with the talent that Chris Tyree has. By the way, everybody, he's still the fastest guy on the team for now.
Right.
So use that speed, man. Like, there are a ton of matchup nightmares that you could have with Chris Tyree against a safety or against a linebacker. Use that. They go cover 0 and Chris Tyree's in the game. They're not going to cover him with a corner. They're going to cover him with a linebacker or a safety. Use that to your advantage, man.
Total mismatch.
I know that it sounds simple, but that's how you coach high school football, man. It's matchups. You find your best matchups. All right. That's what.
Ask Bill Belichick. Everything is about the matchups. That's exactly what it is.
That's what football is. Just ask Brian. He talks about it all the time. Football is about matchups. You have a mismatch no matter what team you play when Chris Tyree is matched up against a linebacker or a safety.
Right. So Reese Davis. Go ahead, Jess.
No, I like a lot of the stuff that you guys are saying. I think that 21 personnel and having Tyree as the constant in the 21 personnel makes the most sense because you have a guy that's your most complete kind of like slot back that can catch the ball in the backfield. And you have Estimate, who's the downhill runner, and same with Diggs. And I just really think, especially, when, like Vince said, you create the one-on-one matchups, you get one-on-one matchups with linebackers. And I'd like to see them use those kind of wheel routes, perimeter routes with their running backs. We saw it a lot against USC a few years ago when they went 2-back sets. They threw a lot of screens out of the backfield. I think those are similar things that should be, anticipated or used in the last couple of games, because I think that's when their offense is the best, is when you have a power run game and then you have these kind of, you don't have to hit the home run balls. You can hit these kind of layups to Tyree out of the backfield, short passes to Mayer in the flat out of the backfield. They don't have to be these home run shots, and that's nothing against Pine. That's just the dominance of their offensive line and running game and what it's able to set up off of it. And like I said, you can still get into your passing game without getting overly complex. And I just think that's their best option right now.
See, and that's the thing, complex. I would think that they're going to try to keep it as basic as possible these next 2 weeks. And, again, save whatever surprises or, whatever for USC
and that's
at the end of the season.
I mean, I hate to say it, but
I know what you're saying. I know what you're going to say, Vince, but that seems to be kind of what Tommy Reese is doing, right?
Look, all we have to go off of is the facts that are in front of us, right?
That's right.
And what we've seen is exactly that. And I made this comment a few weeks ago about how Tommy Reese, when they were doing well, it's like, well, Tommy Reese calls a better game for a guy like Drew Pine, who was more like who he was than he did for Tyler Buckner, right?
Yeah.
And that seems ridiculous to say it out loud, but when the proof is right there in front of you, that's all you have to go off of right now. There's been a few games where that obviously has not been the case since then, but at the same time, all we have is what's in front of us. And right now, it appears that he was saving his best play calling for the big games. And that's just nuts to me. I don't get that.
Right. I think Reese Davis from Game Day, he said this not on actual Game Day itself, but on the Game Day podcast, quote, "I don't think the way Notre Dame is built, running the ball and throwing to Mayer as good as he is and as good as they are running, you're not doing that to Clemson. You're just not," end quote. And look, I'm not going to throw shade on Reese Davis because we all had that question. This was a legitimate top 5 team. They were allowing less than 90 yards per game. I think we were all in the same boat. It was a big question that we had. And what happened? They just come out and gouge them. But again, they went against the tendencies that they had shown most of the year. And then, that's kind of how they were going to, that's how they were able to do it. Now, you mentioned Drew Pine, Vince, just 9 of 17 for 85 yards.
Yeah.
Who would have thought that Notre Dame could beat Clemson if Drew Pine was going to have a line like that? 9 of 17, 85 yards, just 1 touchdown. Raise your hand if you had thought that, Notre Dame could have a quarterback have that kind of day and beat the number 4 team in the country. I don't see any hands up here in the video.
Yeah, you're not getting a hand from me.
No,
yeah,
me neither.
So I guess, class, the question is this run-heavy game plan sustainable for the Irish the rest of the season? Yes.
I do think it is sustainable to a certain point, and I think that you can the main majority of your offense needs to revolve around this run game. Yes, I think that, But I don't think that you're going to have that success week in and week out like you did against Clemson continuously going forward. And sure, I think that they should try it. Like I remember we were talking a few weeks and I just would get frustrated at Tommy Rees because it felt like he'd hand the ball off. And then all of a sudden they'd get a first down. And instead of, maybe going another handoff, you couldn't get uncomfortable and just handing the ball off again and again if it was going to work. Like if you're going to get 3 to 4 yards every time and what this offense is built to do, I'm okay with them setting up shop 3rd and 2nd, 3rd and 3 every time.
It's a little bit like, the way this offense functions, it's a little bit like an option offense, just in like you probably like the odds say you probably don't want to be throwing on first down considering the performance of the quarterback and the receivers and everything else right now. You want to, and if you are going to throw on first down, I was going to use an expletive, but it needs to be with the play action pass, like a good show of play action considering you are so run heavy. That's what it needs to be off of. But because the times that we have seen them try to throw on first down, it has been less successful and it gets them off schedule. They want to stay on schedule as much as possible, just like what an option offense would do.
Yeah. So I just don't want them, sorry, Vince, to get into the pass when they don't need to. I think you can continuously run the ball until a team shows that they're going to consistently stop you. And then you start going to play action. But there should be early in the game, there shouldn't be a lot of dedicated drop back passes. There shouldn't be straight 3-step drop. Fine. It should be, we're going to run the ball. And if you're going to stop us, then we'll kind of maybe shift into some more play action or, what that might look like. I don't know, but I just think that they need to establish the run and get stopped in the run game first before they downshift to any other things. I'm not saying run the ball 100 straight times, but obviously majority of it, run it. And then, run your play action off of that until you're kind of stopped to a point.
Vincenzo?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say that if we're looking at the realistic, the last 3 games of the season, can you sustain a running game against these defenses? Yeah, you can. I mean, is that best for the growth of this team and of this program? Maybe not, but you can still be successful and win these games running the crap out of the football because I don't think any of these 3 defenses are all that great. And you're going to have success running the football. And I don't care that Navy averages 88 yards a game against the run because nobody tries to run the ball because they don't have to, because all they're doing is throwing the ball and they're having major success, right? So that has to be taken into account. But you're going to be able to run the ball against anybody. Again, they have to be two-dimensional. You can't just be a run game team. You're going to have to do play action. You're going to have to get the running backs involved. You're going to have to do all of these different things. But for the rest of the 22 season, you can run the ball and still win all 3 games.
Yeah,
right. Absolutely.
Right. Irish Blooded says, going to disagree some this week against this bad of a defense. I don't want to see as many third downs. I expect more early down conversions. What do you think about that, Vince?
You know what? When you guys were talking about when to run the ball and when to pass the ball and everything, with this team, the way this team is constructed, I'm running the ball on first down because I'm most likely going to have 2nd and short. That's when I'm throwing the ball.
Yeah, you should be able to get 5 yards most of the time, or at least 4 with this running game, again, against these defenses. And that sets you up. Okay, you can take a shot if you need to. And then, if frickin' Audric Estime is out there, most of the time it's a high percentage play on 3rd and 5 or 3rd and 4 just to hand it to him and let him bulldoze through everybody and see what he can do. I mean, look at what we saw him do last week in some of those situations.
Exactly. You're going to have a lot of 2nd and shorts, 2nd and manageables, things of that nature where you can throw the ball on play action. I mean, that's my throwing down coming into this game and maybe moving forward, because you're right. You don't really necessarily want this offense in 2nd and 10, right? If you can't convert that play action on first down, but I'll take 3rd and 3 all day long because I think Notre Dame can pick that up for the most part. So yeah, this is still going to be a run first team and a play action and all of that. You can take your shots. I trust Drew Pine to take shots. I have no problem with that, but I want singular reads. I want reads. I want, 1-2 throw, one read, 2 read throw, or scramble or whatever, or check down, 1-2 check down. How about that? Right. Because running backs have been open on the check down all season and he's not getting it to them. So I don't want anything complicated in the pass game because I don't want Drew Pine thinking too much. I just want him going out there and playing. When he goes out there and just plays, he's fine.
Milton Fan 15, super sticker. Thank you for the super chat there.
I know it was because of me, so we'll just throw that out there.
From Jen's family, EXO from the USS Iwo Jima, 1980s, Captain Jones. You take men and try to make them boys. Notre Dame will destroy you, clan. Okay.
All right.
Not sure exactly what all that means, but
it's okay.
Again, it's Veterans Day weekend and we're playing Navy. So
absolutely.
What about the defense? Held Clemson to 281 yards. DJ Uiagalelei, 27 of 39 for 191. Touchdown interception, sacked 4 times. Cade Klubnik, of course, his only pass attempt was an interception by Benjamin Morrison. Just 90 yards rushing. Jess, I'll start with you and then over to Vince. What impressed you most about the defense?
What impressed me the most about the defense was on a much, because we could get into, what they did to shut down different aspects of the game, but at a more broader global level, they just had a relentless attitude that they weren't going to be stopped. And it showed, the entire game because of how their corners and rovers were getting off blocks and making tackles. They were making tackles, gang tackles. Every tackle was a guy was standing him up and 3, 4, 5 other guys were coming to help out. So the thing that most impressed me about the defense was just that relentless attitude of they weren't going to be stopped and they were going to do everything possible, to shut down Clemson. They knew that they needed to limit Clemson based on where their offense was at. It's not like Notre Dame's offense is built to score, 35, 42 points. And now they did, but they got a lot of help because of special teams and defense, right? Their offense isn't built against an opponent like Clemson to run the score up. And so the defense took on the challenge of we need to shut them down. And it was a mindset. It was a mentality. You saw that the way that they played, they took very good pride, in playing defense as a unit, and they shut everything down. They shut down the inside run. They shut down the screens on the perimeter. And then DJ couldn't go with any, the ball downfield at all either. So they shut down everything that Clemson wanted to do. And I think it was just mainly a mindset. Those guys weren't going to be stopped. They were determined. And I just love to see it, seeing them fly around with so much, passion to play together.
Well, for me, since Jesse kind of went the route that I was going to go, I will go the coaching route, and I will say that I was very impressed with Al Golden's game plan because they forced Clemson to go to the outside passes in their RPO game. I mean, they forced it, and that's a game plan situation. Yes, the players have to execute that game plan, but they forced them to go outside, which is what Clemson wanted to do because when you watch film of Notre Dame, they're not good at tackling in space, right? And so they forced it outside. There was an emphasis on tackling in space. There was an emphasis on gang tackling, flying to the football, everything that Jesse just said. And it played right into the hands of the game plan for both Notre Dame and Clemson. Because that's what Clemson wanted to do.
Yeah,
Notre Dame's like, go ahead.
Notre Dame
trapdoored them right into it.
They trapdoored them. That's a great comment, Jesse. That's exactly what they did. So I give a lot of credit to the coaching staff on the game plan. They played right into what Clemson wanted to do, and they shut it down. That is impressive to me.
They made Clemson think that, oh, yeah, we're doing exactly what we want. And then was like, no, that's exactly what we want you to do. So thank you.
There's a reason that Clemson kept going outside to that bubble screen every single time because they're like, they can't keep tackling us in space. And they did. I mean, it was just
it was important just for the first guy to get there and, at least
hold him up,
make and let the other guys rally to the football. And we just kept seeing that all night long, obviously.
Right.
And as Bill said, Bertrand was great. We talked about it during the week. Probably the best game of JD Bertrand's career, a guy who's been criticized a bit. And I'm curious to see how it continues here down the stretch. And I think, Jesse, I heard you bring this up during the week, maybe with either Brian or Vince. I can't remember since I was off a couple of shows, just the fact that this guy has been here long enough that he's had 3 different defensive coordinators now. And this team that he is playing in is probably more complex than the first 2. So are we seeing a guy maybe who's finally more comfortable in this defense, especially as the middle linebacker who has to know so much and know where everybody else is supposed to be? So how does that continue for him? Are we going to continue to see an elevation of JD Bertrand's play here down the stretch? Because we know he's a smart guy and he's a great leader on all those different things, but we need to see continued play on the field.
Well, depending on how they want to play this triple option.
Yeah, I mean, today is a completely different story.
But at the same time, this is an offense that the middle linebacker feasts off of. Just ask Just ask stat stuffing Jesse from high school. Okay, like this is where
Brian
you
asked me what's the best part about playing triple option besides the stats, and I was like, that is the best. Like, there's no other reward than racking up like a 20 piece on the stat sheet because you're just getting railed the entire game. Like, that is literally the only advantage to that game is you walk out there with some bruises, the ladies think you're tough, and you got like a 20 piece on the stat sheet.
And I mean,
it's a perfect opportunity for JD Bertrand to stuff the stats, man.
Yeah, I mean, like, and it's funny that the team that he used to do that against is the team that I do the games for now, Mishawaka High School, where of course scout team member Justin Fisher played. And back when I was first doing that, Keith Kinder, the head coach at Mishawaka, and I used to have conversations about old former number 25 for Adams, and about those days that he used to frustrate Mishawaka, in that offense trying to move the football. You guys made it tough for him. Those were the days.
Yeah,
for Adams football, the good old days.
We'll be able to get into it a little bit later, but that's to me the most important aspect is stopping the fullback dive, and your middle linebacker is going to be the guy who's going to stop the fullback dive, and everything else kind of revolves off of that. The success of the fullback dive and the option offense, and I thought you brought up a good point with Bertrand. It is his third year at the offense, and there is a lot of similarities, but there's also the contrast and just the kind of small intricacies that different defensive coordinators have. Like, not every defensive coordinator is the same, obviously, and there's going to be different schemes and different things they're trying to accomplish. And I think it's kind of, I'm not giving Bertrand excuses, but it is hard to be a part of a new defense every year. That's how you obviously get better as a player, is you continuously, you're practicing the same things over and over. When those things are kind of continuously changing a little bit here and there, it is a little tougher. And I think the biggest thing, and I think why he'll have a lot of success again today, is just letting these guys play. It seemed like against Clemson, it was just, play, get downhill fast. And as long as you're getting downhill fast, we're okay if you're going to air, obviously you're not coaching air, but if you're playing fast, you're more, acceptable, or you accept errors that kind of come with playing fast and physical. And today is a perfect game where he's just going to probably be in control of the A gap mostly. And you can plug that fast. You can get downhill fast. There's not a lot of thinking. As soon as you see the fullback, that's kind of like your main design. So I think he's going to have another great game and stopping the fullback dive, and then just being another guy that helps, rally to the pile and just make kind of team tackles all game long.
Yes. So as far as today, and I'm starting to see some.
I know the answer to this, but I'm trying to
Hang on a sec.
Okay, I can say why if you're ready. I had to get permission. I want to make sure.
Yeah, that's what I was too. And so go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Tobias is out he's in concussion protocol.
Right.
So so he can't play today. It's nothing. It's just concussion protocol. It's nothing serious. It is what it is. So he's out for today.
All right.
And then I think
so. I'm getting the text from Brian. I'm just So like,
and Brandon Joseph is out because of his nagging injury, and this is a fine game to have him sit out.
I mean, we talked about this week. Brandon Joseph out. He's got an ankle. We saw him. He injured the ankle against Clemson last week, and he stayed in, returned some punts, but didn't play safety. So Matt Salerno, the old former Mr. Fair Catch, will be back there on punt returns. I'll be interested to see if Matt tries to return one today. He's been out there obviously more on offense this year, but I mean,
and look, he was fair catching because he was told to fair catch, right? Yeah. I mean, let's be that wasn't him going out there and be like, I'm gonna fair catch all day. Like, that's what he was told to do.
No, and I mean that's a great point, because like even Brian Mason has said, well, the first priority of the punt return man is to secure the football. If you can return it, return it. But under the old regime, it was the only priority of the punt return man it was to secure the football. There was no other priority.
And
it's a different mentality now with Brian Mason. I mean, as obviously, we see with the block punts, like I was saying the other day, it's like all we heard about for 12 years was, you can't block punts these days because of the rugby style kicks and the different, the spread out formation and blah, blah, blah. Well, 6 block punts later with 3 games to go, 4 with a bowl game. It's like, I don't think so. I don't think so.
I think the biggest shift is it's just a mentality and who their special teams coordinator is right now. Notre Dame's special teams coordinator is in the mindset of let's make game-changing plays with our special teams unit. How can we affect the game? Can we advance the ball at least 5-10 yards on the punt? Can we get after the punt block? And it feels like the old mentality was let's not make mistakes on special teams. Let's not let special teams hurt us anyway. Let's not get a roughing the punter, put us in the potential possibility. It was just a way more conservative outlook. The muff punts, they just didn't want to do anything to give the other team, I think, an extra possession. And, I just don't necessarily agree with it because the special teams is the third phase of the game, and you should be able to take advantage of it and make big plays. And that's what we've seen this year. These plays have helped define and get Notre Dame propelled. And I think it's it needs more recognition for what they've been able to do in the special teams this year. I think it's definitely, picked up some of the slack and maybe some of their different, obviously offensively, and help out the defense as well.
In 2016, special teams was a liability, as we saw, when they didn't know how to recover an onside kick and, just all these basic things that weren't going on. And they made that move to Brian Polian after that. So while special teams didn't necessarily become a strong asset, it was at least break even. That was their goal. Just be break even, don't get hurt, and don't have it be a liability. But there's obviously been a completely different shift in that mentality. And I think everyone loves it,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So let me ask you. So after the win over Clemson, Notre Dame's now 4-1 against ranked teams. They're still 2-2 against unranked teams. This will be their third time playing an unranked team right after playing a ranked team. They're 0-2 in those first two games. So are you concerned about a possible hangover after what is the biggest win of the Marcus Freeman era last week?
I am not concerned about a hangover because I feel like Marcus Freeman has evolved as a head coach. I don't think he's going to allow that to happen at this point. I'm not saying that he went into, allowing the letdown to happen before, but he has now experienced the letdown, right? And I feel like we have enough empirical evidence of Marcus Freeman to know that he learns from his mistakes, okay? He learns from his experiences. He's experienced that. I don't see it happening again. I can't see a world in which Notre Dame loses to another unranked team in the fashion that they did the last two times. I just don't. I have a lot of faith in Marcus Freeman that he is very reflective and he looks at things that didn't work and he fixes those things, and he has done that throughout the season. So I just don't see that being the case today.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Vince, just knocking on all the wood around me. I'm not trying to jinx anything here, but I just don't see that. I don't. Navy, first of all, Navy, in my opinion, doesn't present a situation quite like what Stanford might have been, and those kind of situations. And main thing I'm going to agree with Vince is I think Freeman is very self-aware, and he takes he talks about how he watches film immediately after the game. Like, the man is constantly thinking about how he can evolve as a coach and not making the same mistakes over again. And a lot of times it's, we as coaches need to put our players in better situations. And that is a maturity of a head coach. And I think that, that's the biggest thing I think is I don't think this is more so a kind of, Notre Dame evolution. This has been more of a Marcus Freeman evolution of getting into, what it means to be a head coach, how he can be, what he talks about, how being there in the best, moment for his team, what, being, that's constantly changing of what he needs to be for his team at certain times. And I just think we've seen kind of the struggles of getting to this point in the evolution of kind of Marcus Freeman as a head coach. And we've seen him constantly tweaking this formula for success. That's all it's kind of been, is this, he's tweaking what he thinks is, Notre Dame's equation to success, and he's constantly tweaking it. Mm-hmm. And I just don't think we're going to see a lot of those same mistakes because he's past that. He's not going to allow, those same mistakes to happen in the equation. So I really think we're going to see, again, another dominant performance today. I think the triple option provides its challenges, but I think we're going to see a very, very similar performance to what we saw last week. I think there's going to be a lot of relentless, throat on the neck until later in the game.
As Sean Palace says, the only hangover was already spoofed for the Shamrock series. Good one. They should call you Carlos, Sean.
Everyone seems to be noticing the fourth member of the show, and that's my dog Henry back here.
Is he back there?
He's chilling on top of the couch right now.
In the window, I've seen like 3 or 4 people in the chat. His name's Henry, everyone. He's he's a staple on the Tuesday and Thursday night.
That's right.
He's going to see like the mailman or another dog here soon, so you'll hear him bark.
Just be ready.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about Navy. Ken Niumatalolo, already in his 15th year. It's like we're just getting older, I think, because Ken Niumatalolo has been around for 15 years right now. And I just like the fact that I can say his name right at this point. It's only taken 15 years to get to this point. But he had winning records in 9 of his first 10 seasons, but the Mids are now in the midst of what could be their 4th losing season in the last 5 years. And it's, Bill Wagner is a guy who I've talked to a lot over the years who covers Navy. Unfortunately, we weren't able to connect, to do the opposing beat writer interview with him. But Ken Niumatalolo has been, pretty stable in his job there. I will be curious to see how long that continues, considering they are on a downward slide. It was, obviously around that time when Navy started beating Notre Dame that, they had a long stretch of winning seasons that they were pulling off between Paul Johnson and then Niumatalolo. But this will be the 96th all-time meeting between these two. And of course, they played every year from 1927 through 2019. It was only the pandemic in 2020 that put a halt to what was the longest running uninterrupted intersectional rivalry in the nation. But they are 9th in the nation at nearly 237 yards rushing per game with that triple option offense. The fullback, Daba Fofana, leads the Mids with 565 yards, just 3.9 per carry. I say just, but, as Jesse would say, that's a success because in that triple option, if you're popping off almost 4 yards per carry, that's first down in 3 plays is what it is. But, their offense by their standards, I mean, let's be honest, they've got a 3-6 record coming into the season. One of their slot backs, Mikel Haywood, is their second leading rusher at 417 per game. They obviously don't pass a lot, but what's interesting, of course, about this offense is their receivers, all of their receivers, average at least 15 yards per catch because they'll catch you off guard when they throw it from time to time. Like Vincent Terrell, 8 catches, 206 yards at 25.7 per catch. So, it's important for Notre Dame's defensive backs not to get caught kind of peeking into the backfield against this. Jesse has played against the option offense. Vince and I have seen it with Mishawaka, as we have watched it broadcasting. And of course, Vince has coached against it as well back in his time. So,
when our buddy Frank Amato ran triple, he just ran it out of I formation.
That's right.
Not the wing look. So it's the same exact principles. And so I've coached it too. And frankly, at the high school level, I absolutely love it. I'm just going to say it. I know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great equalizer.
Happy, but it is an equalizer, and I love it. You got to be a smart football player, and specifically the linemen. The linemen are the smartest football players on the field offensively to run the triple option.
Yes. Stiers, D'Addario, and Henry Law Firm. Henry with the back seat. So Jesse, again, he played against it quite a bit in high school against that Mishawaka option offense. Do you have your whiteboard ready, Jesse, just to kind of give us a general overview of what we expect the assignments to look like potentially for Notre Dame today as they try to attack this triple option offense?
Yeah, I have just a very kind of high level schematic of showing where things would be, but I just think that there's different ways you can approach it. I don't know how Algon's going to approach it. There's more of like the downhill, we're just going to get there ASAP, and there's more of like a slow flow kind of reading type aspect. I guess I'm going to go into what I would favor and how I would think Notre Dame would line up best against the triple option today, or just basic kind of assignments. So
and this is going to be really good, and I'm really looking forward to this. So I'm just going to sit back and watch, but I will also say at the D1 level, and when you're playing against a team like Navy, who is just so expert in running the triple option, you have to throw multiple defensive looks at the triple option. You can't just go with one look because they're going to figure it out and they have a counter to it, right? So
Right.
This is probably what I would do as well. I think it was where Jesse's going to go, but this would be my base as well.
All right. So we'll throw this up here in the old stream, and I'll blow it up. Let me see. Hang on a sec.
I mean, we can get ourselves out of here too.
Yeah, I was going to say.
There we
Boom.
go.
There we go. All right, Professor Jesse.
Yeah. So, Navy is going to mainly come out in what's considered a flex bone kind of offense. That's, and this is what Brian and I got into. We talked a lot of triple option on Thursday. There are so many different offenses that you could call triple option just because that there's three options. Like an RPO game, in my opinion, is still considered a triple option. Taking shotgun out of or quarterback out of shotgun, and you can run speed option out of that to the perimeter. So there's multiple different things that you can call kind of triple option, but there's a difference between triple option full, like you're committed to the triple option offense. And that's more so what Navy does. They come out in the flex bone, meaning that they flex out, these super backs or slot backs over here. And then you have your quarterback under center and your fullback, 4 to 5 yards behind him in a 3-point stance. And this is what, if I were Notre Dame, what I would most likely like to see some sort of, general idea around is 4 down linemen, 4 linebackers, and then a 3. So if you want to call it a 4-4-3, a 4-2-5, whatever you want to call it, I don't care. But as long as they have 4 down linemen and 4, linebackers across the board as well, I think that's going to have the most success. We talked a little bit earlier, or I said a little bit earlier, the fullback dive is really the biggest concern, or you have to shut it down. And because if there's fullback dive, that just makes these guys just, kind of cheat in this way a little bit more. Obviously, everyone's kind of first step is here. And so when the fullback dive is working, it just sucks everything up. It gives you a better chance on the perimeter. So the first thing to take away the fullback dive is these 4 guys have to be responsible for fullback dive. And really, it's just they're plugging up the A's and B gap at any variation. Like these guys can stunt, meaning the defensive lineman could go A, this guy could work B off of him. This guy could straight fire B, this guy could straight fire A. Whatever that combination is, these 4 guys have to handle the inside run and the fullback dive. And then after that, once you've either given the ball or faked it, now we're working some sort of option. This guy is coming maybe this way on a pitch, speed option pitch to the outside. Maybe this guy's coming this way and they're trying to work up here or here. But once you get to that point, the defensive end and your linebackers are now responsible for quarterback and pitch, whatever side it's going to be. And I like the defensive end hitting the quarterback every play. Like if the quarterback wants to keep it and he wants to go into pitch phase, this guy needs to remind him every time why he shouldn't be doing that. Those are free hits on your quarterback. You can get him into the ground. There's no rules. There's no roughing the passer. There's no anything. These defensive ends should be literally trying to murder the quarterback every play. And then I want these linebackers to take the pitch man off of that. And then obviously your corners are kind of going to help in there too, right? Like this guy's job is to funnel everything to the outside. This guy's job is to funnel everything to the inside. And so you're both kind of making the tackle, here. And this guy is using sideline as leverage if he needs to. You just can't get beat to the outside. You're trying to force everything back to the inside. And then your safety kind of becomes, in my opinion, and when you're running the triple option, the safety kind of becomes your cleanup man. Like he's kind of playing center field. He's watching, making sure he's like your overhang guy. He's going to come down either way and clean things up in the alley. So I just think that this is the best overall, what they do off of this, you can do so many things, but the basics of your 4 inside guys handle the fullback dive, your defensive end and outside linebacker are handling quarterback pitch man. And if it gets to pitch man, your corner and safety are kind of the cleanup, on depending on what side the option comes to.
Do you guys, again, there's not going to be any Brandon Joseph today. Ramon Henderson has been good close to the line of scrimmage. I think Xavier Watts, as I just saw, Brent was commenting about him. I think that he's good. It's typically like Bo Bauer has been one of those guys. There's always a linebacker when the Navy game comes up who isn't necessarily like their big gun on a regular basis, but when Navy comes to town, there's that middle linebacker type guy who becomes, like the Navy guy. And Bo Bauer was that. He's gone now. But do you think we see more of these safety type guys as well, especially defending the perimeter against, what Navy calls the slot backs? Like at Mishawaka, they call their wings just halfbacks. Do you think that we see more safety type guys and fewer linebackers against them today?
I like more of the big, not big, but more of the linebacker, aspect of it, because the run game like this, it's a very physical run game, and I get it. You have strong safeties and free safeties. So obviously your strong safety is going to be more of the guy who's filling the alley in the run game. And so I think that if you're going to go with safety, it's got to be one of your bulkier kind of safety guys. You're not putting a safety obviously out there that's better in coverage, because there's no reason for coverage. So if you're going to go the safety route, it's got to be someone who's beefed up a little bit and is a good tackler in space. AKA, like if they had Kyle Hamilton back again, like he's the perfect safety to play the triple option. I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a play I think against Navy either last year or 2 years ago on the fourth down play, and he comes down and absolutely fills the hole and gets a tackle for loss, on the fourth down play. So it's hard unless you have a safety of that kind of caliber. And I think you have a better chance of success with going more of kind of a linebacker type guy. Vince, what do you think?
No, I agree. And I think you can mix it up. I think there's a lot of different things that you can do. And I think that's going to be part of the fun of the whole thing is, yes, you do generally have somebody who hasn't really contributed, who is just really good at triple, right? They're just really good at their assignment, and they're really good at tackling in space. And from a physicality standpoint, you get a guy like DJ Brown, and I know that's going to strike fear into the hearts of many because he hasn't been good at tackling in space. There's not a lot of in-space tackling if you're playing inside the box. And so you can come downhill and you can just hit people over and over again, and you're going to get you're going to have success, right? And so you're going to see different guys. You're going to see linebacker types. Like I think Jack Kaiser is going to be a very beneficial guy to have in this defense because he's played against triple at the 1A level, because you and I have done a lot of high school football before, and at the 1A level, they're not exactly slinging it around usually. It's a lot of option. It's a lot of I formation. It's a lot of old school because you don't have a ton of athletes at that 1A small school level. He's going to be really good in this defense. No doubt about it, right? You bring DJ Brown into the box. You could bring Xavier Watts down in the box. There's a lot of different things that you can do to make yourself successful. And that's part of the fun for me of watching whatever defense Notre Dame comes up with to play against the triple option, is you get to see some guys playing in some different spots or having some success that they haven't had yet. There's a really good question in here, Jess, that I want you to answer. And it says, does Navy favor, this is Spark, he says, does Navy favor which side they run to, left or right? And I know you're setting up a different formation here, but the original formation is a balanced formation. So I'll let you go from there.
Yeah. So if just before you get started, Jess, you're going to have time to diagram maybe one more thing, because remember, we have to wrap up early today because it's a noon game and we got to get to rapid fire here in a couple minutes.
Oh, we could do this all day. All right.
Give us your best stuff.
Yeah. So what Vince was saying, largely depending on where you're running the play, field side or boundary, just depends on what Navy's trying to accomplish. Because if you're running into the boundary, that's saying we're going to take our numbers. It's a numbers game. You're going to have maybe 10 hats on 9 into the boundary, and you're just assuming that, like, kind of like the law of mass, that, through your blocking, that our mass is going to move your mass because we have more people. And so and then you're going to run to the boundary if you're more of like a speed option. Your option is more of a threat in the option offense. So Navy, it's hard because they actually don't run a whole lot of committed triple option. And that's kind of what I was getting into a little bit here is, I've seen them kind of go with this overload look before, and they're just kind of running, straight veer off the tackle. A lot of just kind of power runs right off, the tackle trying to hit here. And I think the biggest thing Notre Dame has to be concerned with today, and kind of wrapping up here, is the option offense is so much eye candy because they're going to show you a lot of repetitive movement, in these areas, whether it be fullback dive, veer off the tackle. And so you think you have it as a linebacker, what's coming. And then all of a sudden, everyone blocks down, quarterback still opens this way. And the running back can hard line, kind of take it a counter veer. And these guys are coming down. And this left guard, he's not even really pulling. He's just waiting a half a step and he's going to kick out this way. And so they have to be conscious of the counters and the eye candy, because it looks like the same play over and over and over again, and they're going to leak a counter, back the other way. And that's got to be the number one thing that Notre Dame is looking for today is, not getting caught up in their eyes a lot of the time. Follow, the guards, follow, trust your eyes, but at the same time, don't get caught with the counter. And I think the last thing I want to pose to both of you is, where do you think Prince Kali would best line up? Brian and I had a good conversation today. He thought, he thought he would be better in the inside, maybe at this spot, because of this reason. It's good to have a good backside player who can get downhill fast and blow things up, right? But I like him on the outside because I think he's better in space, and you could stick with more of like a Bertrand and Kaiser in the middle. So
like on the weak side base, like you're going to line him up on the weak side all the time to try to counter what you were just talking about, counter the counters. Exactly.
You have kind of a counter man who's good in space and can make up for recovery if you get burned on the counter a little bit. And if the play is definitely going this way, he can get downhill fast. Like, he can blow up the play fast at the same time. So we were having, on the perimeter, obviously, if Navy's going more of like the option to the perimeter, that aspect makes sense. But for the counters and being able to, be that backside guy, I think he makes a lot of sense. And you might see him and Bertrand holding down the middle today. I really like Maris on the outside, though, too. I think Maris is going to have a great game playing out here as one of the edge linebackers.
All right, so that's the first thing I'm going to disagree with you on that one, Jess. I think Maris needs to sit the bench the entire game because he's terrible in assignment football.
Yeah, I agree, but
I would not have him anywhere near the football field because I think he can make mistakes that could turn into a big play.
Yeah, his best thing is just go.
Yeah, and I just I mean, you might be able to sub him in once, and I just don't think he can be a guy that you're counting on. My four linebackers would be Kaiser, Kali, Tuialamaka, and Bertrand. Those are my four, because I think that they can play that box and play it really, 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 really well. I would put Bertrand and Tuialamaka in the inside, and I would have Kaiser and Kali on the outside.
Okay.
I think that makes sense. I think that makes a lot of sense. I'll be curious to see.
But that's the thing about these games.
Because again, this game specifically, there's always going to be one of those linebackers who finds himself out of the rotation just because it's assignment football, and you got to have a guy you can trust with the assignments. So I'll be curious to see what that ends up looking like today.
Yep. It's going to be fun. That's what I said. That's why I like this game a lot, because you just see guys kind of stepping up and doing some different things.
Yeah. All right. Good stuff, Jess. Great stuff on the whiteboard. But with that said, are you ready for rapid fire?
I'm always ready for the
best part of the show, baby. Let's roll.
All right. Here we go. We'll start with Vince and then over to Jesse. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Notre Dame now has won 27 consecutive games against ACC teams after taking out Clemson last week.
It's embarrassing for the ACC. That's where I'll go, because they don't have anybody that can beat Notre Dame in the regular season. Like, you've thrown every single team you have against Notre Dame, and none of them have won. That's embarrassing.
Yeah, it's complete dominance that Notre Dame has, now won 27 consecutive ACC games. And now you're going to make a strong case that Notre Dame has beaten both of who your potential ACC championship matchups is going to be with North Carolina and Clemson. And both of those teams only end up with one loss going into that conference championship. That only makes Notre Dame look better. And you can almost crown Notre Dame as the ACC, definitely the ACC regular season champ. They took down Syracuse, North Carolina, Clemson,
by the way.
Yeah, they're undefeated in the ACC, and they beat the two teams who are going to probably be playing, for the ACC championship, and their only losses. Like, it's everything goes to Notre Dame. I think that statement right there, that 27 consecutive times this season, 2 one-loss teams are likely going to play in the ACC championship, and Notre Dame has handed out both those losses. You can confidently say Notre Dame doesn't belong in the ACC for football, like, logistically, but the ACC runs through them when it comes to football. And that might be dramatic or a stretch, but when you've won 27 straight and the two teams are playing, for the conference championship, and you've beaten both of them handily, I think it runs the ACC football right now runs through Notre Dame.
Yeah. It's very telling for the ACC because of what you were just talking about. And let's not forget, Notre Dame basically played a full schedule against the ACC 2 years ago. during the pandemic season and found themselves playing in the ACC championship game. They won an ACC championship their only year as a member of the conference because of that. And then, again, found themselves in the playoff. And now the two best teams in the ACC each only have one loss, and they've been just beat downs by Notre Dame in a down year for Notre Dame. So I think it is very telling for the ACC. And it's just total this streak is going to end at some point.
Of course.
But for right now, it's just amazing that Notre Dame has this kind of consecutive games. Now, of course, they did lose the ACC championship game to Clemson.
Sure.
But again, we're talking about the regular season, and it is just a very amazing streak and shows how much really the ACC needs Notre Dame. I think that there are some people who can try to deny it, but the ACC needs Notre Dame badly. And it's, again, you've got the two guys who are going to win the division, and Notre Dame has beaten both of them this year. So after last week's dominating rushing performance, ESPN's Dan Orlovsky, who again is going to be the analyst for today's game, Notre Dame Navy, tweeted, "Y'all still want to fire Tommy Rees." So Jess, I'll start with you on this one. What do you think? Vince was ready to go. Vince, or Jesse,
all good.
What do you think?
No, good.
It's easy for someone like Dan Orlovsky to say that because he comes and goes a few weeks, and it seems like every time Dan comes, we see a good Tommy Rees. And maybe the conversation needs to be, how can Dan Orlovsky become the permanent, guy who's calling Notre Dame games? But it's easy. Like I said, it's easy for Dan to say because he's coming in off of good weeks. And obviously, he's preparing himself for the game this week. So he's watching film, and it's easy to go back and say, oh, wow, look at all the good things. But he hasn't been here from start to finish. Like, if you watch every single snap, I agree. Tommy Rees is a good coordinator, and he comes up with good plays, but he outthinks himself a lot. It's a lot of getting too cute, too this, too much that. And we finally saw it against Clemson last week of just doing what he knows is going to work consistently and making teams prove that they're going to stop you in it. And so, Tommy comes up with good plays, and I enjoy, his play design and his play call, but I just think he shoots himself in the foot so much, and he tries to get too cute.
Yes.
And so that's my biggest issue, and that goes along with a lot of the inconsistencies that we've seen. Tommy Rees is attributed to being inconsistent as well as a play caller, and what his overall kind of game plan is. And so I don't want to fire Tommy Rees. I just want Tommy Rees to be, Clemson Tommy Rees every week. And I know that that's not realistic, but we shouldn't see, the Stanford games and the Marshall games. Like those kind of play calling games shouldn't happen. And so that's where I'm going to kind of leave it.
Yeah, that's it. Show us you can do it game in, game out. Sorry, Vince, I'll let you go first.
You're good, man.
I forgot we started with Jesse on this one.
It's okay. No. He's had 9 games this year, right? He's had 9 opportunities to do his job. Okay, do your effing job, right? You've had 9 opportunities. I would say that 33% of those 9 opportunities, he's done a better than average job, right? One of those opportunities, he's done a bang-up awesome job. You add those two together, that's 44%. So 44% of the time you do a good job at your job. Most of the time you're getting fired for that, okay? I'm not advocating that Tommy Rees get fired. I'm saying Tommy Rees needs to be more consistent with what he does because you only have 12 total opportunities a year, maybe 13 if you make a bowl game. You have 13 to 14 opportunities to do your job. And then, of course, that doesn't even bring into play the quarterback development, which we could get into. But you need to do your job at a more consistent basis.
Yes.
Otherwise, people aren't going to be happy. And right now, he's at a 44% clip, in my opinion. That's not if I operated a 44% success rate at my job,
goodbye.
Probably won't have that very long.
Yeah. It shouldn't have to be a special game plan. It's like, What's your offense? Game in, game out. Just show us you can do it. You don't have to show us you can be tricky and go off tendencies and do all this stuff. Let's just see what's the offense and go out and run the offense consistently on a game in, game out basis. It shouldn't come to it.
Right.
Yeah, and I've said it before. He just needs to establish what he wants his foundation or identity to be as an offense and do that really well and just have small wrinkles week by week that come off of what you do really well. And perfect example is Drew Pine pulling that RPO read and getting in on the touchdown. It's the exact same motion. They're showing the same offense, that they've run the whole game, but you just throw in the tiniest little wrinkle and let Pine finally pull it in the most important, part of the field in the red zone and score. That's what I want to see Tommy do, is get wrinkles off of what he knows his team does really well. That is what I need to see him consistently. I don't need to see, him lining up in all these different sets that have no success. Line up in what work, do it really well, and then show some variations to keep teams on their toes.
Yep.
Yeah. Joe had a super chat. He says, happy game day, not assuming it wins, see Marshall and Stanford, but I think these next two games should be coached and played with USC and the bowl game in mind. What do you think about that, Vince?
Well, I mean, they should be coached with that game in mind. I mean, I don't think it does anybody any good to coach a game thinking about games in the future. So I will disagree with Joe on that one. I know Joe's a coach, and I don't think he would coach a game thinking about 2 games ahead. That's just not a recipe for success. You have to coach this game, and you have to coach this team for where you can coach them for where maybe you want them to be in the future. You're building things, you're building the foundation, that kind of thing. But you can't look 2 games in the future while you're coaching this game, because that's how you lose.
Yeah, going off what Vince said, I think the most important thing is just coaching this game how you want the success to go for the rest of the season, your offensive success. You found the formula for what's kind of working, and you have these back end 3 games, so allow them to work off of each other. Allow what what you want to accomplish against Clemson to roll into Navy, to roll into Boston College, to roll into USC, so that by the time you're at USC, you're putting together even a better display or performance or offense than what you did against Clemson. And I think that they need to, again, they don't need to get into, do we need to see maybe a little bit more passing today? Sure, because of where Navy's secondary is. But that doesn't mean, we're opening up the playbook and we're going with these spread, shotgun, drop back looks. Like, no, just stick to what is your offense and what you're going to run against USC, and continue to build this kind of well-oiled machine. I think that's the best way to look at it in my eyes.
The question, there's a question here in the chat. I can't remember, but if against the option, a player gets the quarterback in the backfield with the ball in his hands, it counts as a sack, right?
Nope. Only
it
if they're
depends on if he's going toward the line of scrimmage, basically. Doesn't it?
I mean, you got to be dropping back for a pass,
right.
And it should be fairly obvious if a quarterback is dropping back for a pass, or if they're running option, or it's a QB keep or whatever. Like last week, if DJ Uiagalelei was running quarterback power and he got tackled in the backfield, that's not a sack. That's just a tackle for loss. So.
Right.
Yeah, there's just going to be a lot more TFLs in the column this week than sacks, right? That it's just another way of saying sack, tackle for loss. It's like the rushing version of a sack, a tackle for loss.
Right. Scale of 1 to 10, how strongly do you want to see the Notre Dame Navy rivalry continue in the future?
Vince?
Absolutely, 100%. That's a 10. I absolutely want this rivalry to continue. I am a student of history, and I will always appreciate the history behind Notre Dame and Navy. And you've got 12 games. You've got room for Navy on your schedule. Period. End of discussion. Sometimes it's bigger than the game itself, and I know that sounds corny and that sounds like a line, but it's true. This game is bigger than the game. It needs to continue.
Yeah, I talked about this on Thursday a little bit with Brian. Notre Dame has been playing Navy since 1927. There is a trophy on the line, the Rip Miller Trophy. And so anytime you bring up a rivalry and you bring up trophies and you bring up a team that you've played since 1927, and the mutual respect that the Naval Academy and the University of Notre Dame have for each other, that and the help that Notre Dame provided Navy at one point, I just think it's always a game that belongs on the schedule. I know it's not the sexiest. I know it's not the most fun, watching the triple option come into town, but it's a rivalry. It's a tradition. And I don't think that there's any reason, to take them off the schedule. It's just, there's a mutual respect. Obviously Navy doesn't get quite the, the recruits and the level of football players that Notre Dame or a lot of the other Power 5 schools do, but that's secondhand for them. They're more concerned about their commitment to the academy and all of those things. So I, as a person, love this tradition against Navy, no matter what state that the Navy football team is in. So
we've got some different comments. Like Stymie says, once a decade at Yankee Stadium because history, never pinstripes again. And then like Alan says, I want Notre Dame versus Army again. And, we've had other people, say like, why don't, would like to see him play Army. more often. I'm a little bit torn on this because I've always been behind it because they were never playing FCS teams. And now, they'd never played an FCS team. They were the final holdout to never play an FCS team. Well, what's going to happen next year? They're going to play Tennessee State. So, I kind of like sort of what Alan is saying. I wouldn't mind seeing maybe you do it like you play Army on the even number years, you play Navy in the odd numbers, something like that, where maybe you rotate it if you're going to do it. But, again, I've never been hot on it. It's Veterans Day weekend, so I'll just stick with okay, whatever. So I'm like an 8 on this. Again,
good, though. 8's pretty high.
Yeah, I mean, it's still I'm okay because it is tradition and the original meaning and how the whole thing got started and one lot, that kind of thing. But don't get me started on the fact that Notre Dame has to subsidize basically a government-funded institution. So,
ooh, look at you.
Feisty.
Double fill in the blanks. The rival you most want to see on Notre Dame's schedule going forward is blank, but the rival you least want to see is blank. Vince, start with you.
So the way I look at this question was, which one do I want to remove from the current schedule and which one would I want to add to the current schedule? That's the way I took this question, right? I would say that I want to remove Stanford. I know everybody's going to be shocked by that. You got to remove Stanford. That game means nothing. There is no tradition behind this game. Please, please, please get rid of Stanford. And I know they have a trophy for that game, Jess, but I still don't like it.
Yeah, I'm going to get you on that one.
That's fine. They can have a trophy, right? You have won the last X amount. That now can be permanently mounted on the wall, and it doesn't need to go anywhere else. Boom, there it is. They need to develop a trophy, and they need to have Clemson on the schedule every year. That's what I want to see. Yes, they have the relationship with the ACC, and so they have Clemson every once in a while. They're doing a home and away, obviously, this year, next year. I think that game would be fun to have every year. I just do. I think that game would be fun. And I will also add a third thing to this. If you are telling me which one do I not want to see that is not currently on the schedule, and that would be Michigan. I do not want them on the schedule.
It doesn't have to be currently on the schedule. Right. I'm just talking about because obviously
I went both
these
ways.
Rivalries, there was a time obviously when Navy, Michigan State, Purdue, Michigan, and obviously USC were always on the schedule, but that's changed because of both the Big Ten schedule as well as Notre Dame's ACC arrangement.
I don't want Michigan on the schedule every year. Every few years, fine. Not every year. I'm good.
Jess?
Yeah, so I'm just getting a few more things. I'm bulletproofing my case here for everyone to I'm just bulletproofing. So the original question, what rival do I want to see on Notre Dame's schedule going forward? I am all in favor of bringing back Michigan State onto Notre Dame's schedule. Notre Dame played Michigan State from 1948 to 2017 pretty much every year. Like Michigan State was on the schedule. There's another trophy involved, the Megaphone Trophy. I am all, they've been playing Michigan State since 1897. I always enjoyed, those games. I talked about this a little bit too. I very much considered going to the School of Michigan State. I think it's a very nice campus, all those things. I just like, those are good, solid games. Like in the early 2000s, those were very good Notre Dame, Michigan State games. There was the double overtime games. There was the fake field goals. There was Kirk Cousins. All of those games, Notre Dame leads the series 48-28. But, since Notre Dame ripped off an 8-game win streak in the 80s and 90s, Michigan State has led the series 11-8, the last kind of 20 times or so that they played. It's a competitive series. I like Michigan State on the schedule. I think they're another very well-coached team, a very solid, program. I like them much more than Michigan. They have much more class, dignity. I hate, playing Michigan because of, to me, that I don't like the fans a lot. I have a lot of friends who are Michigan fans. So I want to add Michigan State back to the
I agree.
Back to the schedule.
Right. So who's off the mix?
Off the schedule, man. I like to keep the rivals. But if I had to get rid of one, I lean towards Stanford and Boston College. I know you can't really get rid of Boston College because it's the two independents, the two, strong Catholic schools.
Well, and they're part of the ACC too. So
yeah, it kind of goes.
You're going to play them. Yeah.
That helps out. I guess I have to go on board with Vince here. And if we're removing a true rival, the one who means the least, it's got to be Stanford.
Yeah, see, I get what you're saying, Jess, about Michigan State, and I get, all the recent acrimony with Michigan that Vince is talking about and why he doesn't want to put them back on. Stanford is one I definitely don't care about. But again, when you went back to that time, which has only been 10, 12 years ago, when Purdue, Michigan State, a lot of times Boston College and Michigan, Michigan wasn't always on the schedule, but they were, regulars. There are only so many games you can get up for in a season. And when all of those teams were on it, the games always meant more to Purdue, Michigan State, and Boston College than they meant to Notre Dame. Michigan was still going to be the big one. So any of the, I don't mind them rotating and being part of the schedule, but even last year, when Purdue was back on and walking through the parking lot, there was just that Purdue stepbrother syndrome, and Michigan State had it to an extent as well. So I'd still rather see Michigan be periodically on the schedule than I would Michigan State for that. And maybe now that they're not regulars on the schedule, maybe it's a little bit different. But when they were on the schedule all the time, I just always felt like it meant much more to both Purdue and Michigan State than it meant to Notre Dame. So I would not mind seeing Stanford get punted from the schedule, and I wouldn't mind seeing Michigan more often, because I'm still from a time when seeing those Notre Dame Michigan games early in the season,
they meant a lot.
Those were just good, rivalry games. It always meant a lot, and there was always going to be a lot of attention on it. But I get reasons why nobody cares to see Michigan.
Yeah.
So
I just don't like all that comes with it. It's always a bad taste in my mouth, no matter what happens.
Yeah. Over under 19.5 passing attempts for Drew Pine today.
Man, how many did he attempt against Clemson? I know he only completed 9. Yeah, it's
19.
It's over. I think that they're going to try to get a little more cutesy in the pass game today. And there's a really good comment brought up in the chat, and I think that someone like Lorenzo Styles today needs to have a game. Tobias is out. Obviously, we saw the transfer at wide receiver. I'm not saying he needs to have a huge game, but we've seen the drops recently. I think this is a big game to kind of get him going a little bit towards the right direction. So I could see some more pass attempts today, and I'd like to see Lorenzo Styles being the guy catching some of those, because I think he can do some good things today.
I was going to go over here, but then I started thinking about it, and this game might be the quickest in real time that any game is on the schedule, right?
Yeah.
Navy's going to run the ball. Notre Dame's going to run the ball.
Love that.
Series are going to be limited in this game, so there's not going to be as many opportunities to throw the ball. I'm going to say under. I think it's going to be under, because I just don't think they're going to have as many opportunities to throw the ball. They're going to want to run it first. They're going to throw it, and I think they're going to have success throwing it. I think he has more more yards than he had, in the last game for sure. But I don't think they're going to throw it that often, because I don't think they're going to have as many opportunities.
Yeah, I'm going to hedge on under as well. I think he's going to be probably right around that 17, 18 range once again. Just because, just what you were saying, statistically, Navy's numbers would say, well, you need to throw against them because they only give up 88 rushing yards a game, but they're giving up 275 passing yards per game. But we've seen even some good teams that Navy has had in these last few years, and Notre Dame has just pounded them.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna say that Navy's defense is such that Notre Dame can't run the ball against them just because statistically they're not giving up that many yards. I think they're still going to try to pound them, and I think that Drew Pine will have. I'm thinking he's going to have a more efficient day, and the yards per pass will be up. But I don't think that we're going to see quantity pass attempts today.
Yeah, I think he could very easily go over 200 yards passing. Yeah. I don't think it's going to take 19 passes to get there.
Yeah. So which is more likely? All 3 Irish running backs top 100 yards from scrimmage, or an Irish wide receiver has the unit's first 100-yard receiving game?
I just said that Drew Pine is going to have under 19 pass attempts, and I'm going to say that the Irish wide receiver has 100 yards. So I think it's going to be a very efficient day in the pass game. I think there's going to be a lot of yards after the catch. And I might even go a step further and say that 100-yard receiver is going to be Lorenzo Styles.
Vince took a lot of my thunder there. You're saying you're saying all-purpose yards, right? Are those straight rushing yards?
All-purpose yards for the backs.
All-purpose. It's yards from scrimmage.
Ooh, that's tough. I think Tyree's going to get some touches today out in space, and I think that he's not going to rush. I think Diggs and Estime are going to get close to each 100 on the ground, and I think Tyree's going to get really close to 100 all-purpose yards. But I think that we're going to see I think we're going to see Diggs and Estime over 100, and I think we're going to see a more concerted effort, like Vince said, to get Styles into the pass game. I think him and Mayer are going to have some sort of combination with, who's those targets, and I just think it's a get-right game for someone like Lorenzo Styles. I think they need him to have this kind of get-right game, and so I'm going to go. It's going to be close, but I think he's going to get to 100. These are all these guys are going to end up, I think, really close to 100. And that's
the thing is,
it's
just so hard to take the wide receiver because we haven't seen it, and it should be Lorenzo Styles, but the drops, he's got 5 drops right now, which are among the leaders in the nation. Unfortunately, it seems like a focus thing with him. Like they've tried to do some things to get him some confidence and get him in the game early, but I just think it's too much for all 3 running backs to have 100 yards from scrimmage, because again, like you said, the snap count should be lower.
Yes, that's my issue.
So if you can get I would feel more confident in the receiver, like if Tobias Merriweather was there, but we're not going to see him today. But I just think a receiver is going to have a better chance because of the yards after catch. All it's going to take is potentially 3 or 4 completions to one guy, and he could be over 100 yards with that. So I'll take the receiver over all 3 running backs, just because I think it's going to be too hard for all 3 running backs because of the touches.
And the question was chances are, right? So,
right.
I mean, the odds are in that favor, I would say.
Right.
I think Tyree catches a touchdown today. I'm going to throw that out there for fun.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to our predictions, starting with Notre Dame Navy. And then we'll get into some of the national games because, again, we got to wrap up here in a few minutes. So, Vince, Notre Dame Navy, fire away.
I'm not going to go through my entire spiel of why I think the score is going to be what it is. But I was checking the betting lines today because I was going to get my Notre Dame bet in, and because I try to always bet on Notre Dame, but I didn't last week. But the over-under in points right now is 39.5. And I have my final score is Notre Dame 35, Navy 6. Which puts it at 41. So it's like, if my prediction comes true, that I got to take the over. I just don't know if they're going to have enough possessions to get that high of a score at this point. So I don't know about the over-under, but I still have Notre Dame 35, Navy 6.
I have Notre Dame 34, and I have Navy 9. I don't think Navy gets into the end zone today. I think they get a couple field goals. But yeah, I got Notre Dame winning 34-9 in a very controlled game. I think similar to what we see last week, a lot of controlled, offensive possessions, and the defense doing what they have to do to shut down Navy. So I got Notre Dame 34 and Navy 9.
Yeah, I made my prediction, and I've talked about this before. I don't like making my prediction so early in the week, but Brian has us do them fairly early in the week. My prediction is Notre Dame 38, Navy 20. Again, and that's what we put up on the site the other day. But I don't feel like Navy's probably going to get to that, as I kind of sit back and have had more time to ingest their offense and Notre Dame's defense and all that kind of stuff. But I'll stick with it. I've got 38-20. I see Notre Dame, having a pretty good balanced attack today. That's usually what happens when they play the midshipmen. All right. Alabama, ranked number 9. Ole Miss, ranked number 11. Where do we stand on this one, guys?
Ooh, man, this one is kind of tough, to be honest with you, because, this is the first time that Alabama's been saddled with 2 losses this early in the season in a really long time. It's been 2010 since that was the case, and that was the last time they lost to LSU. So I think Alabama's reeling a little bit. I know that I'm a little higher on Ole Miss than some other people, but I still think Alabama gets this win, but I think it's going to be close. So I got Alabama 27, Ole Miss 21. So I think Ole Miss covers. I will say that. It's an 11.5 point spread.
Yeah.
Vince, you and I are on the same page. I'm a big Ole Miss fan. I like Lane Kiffin and what he's kind of done on the back end, since kind of leaving USC. And I think this is a great game there's a lot of layers to this game because, Alabama's weak. And I don't know the last time that we could potentially see Alabama suffer 3 losses in the regular season. And so Ole Miss has a great opportunity today, right, to put the nail in the coffin in Alabama. And Ole Miss, I can't remember the last time Ole Miss has beaten Alabama. Lane Kiffin coached under Saban. There's just a lot of different things going on in this game. I think this is the best Ole Miss has looked in a lot of years. They have a good run game. They have a good pass game. I'm going to take Ole Miss to win this game today, and I'm going to I say they win, let's see here, 37-31. I have Ole Miss beating Alabama today.
Apparently, some breaking information that I saw just somebody in the chat. Notre Dame football PR team, JD Bertrand has been rolled out today as well. They don't say why, but JD Bertrand will also not play today.
Boo.
In addition to Tobias Merriweather and Brandon Joseph, no JD Bertrand for the Irish.
We're going to see a lot of young linebackers today against the triple option.
That I agree with completely.
It's kind of concerning.
Yes.
Not concerning, but I think the last thing you wanted to hear is that your captain in the middle of the defense was going to be out today.
And it says that he was ruled out after warmups. So they must have been testing something, and he decided that he can't go. So that is a very interesting situation.
Yeah. As for Alabama, Ole Miss, I would like Ole Miss to win. Lane Kiffin practically begging anyone who would listen not to write off Nick Saban this week because the odds just don't favor Ole Miss. The last time Alabama lost 2 games in a row was 9 years ago when they lost the kick 6 game to Auburn and then lost in the Sugar Bowl to Oklahoma. And they haven't lost 3 games in a season since 2010. So I've got Alabama winning 31-27 today, which, again, Ole Miss is covering, but I don't have them winning. What about UCF Tulane?
Go ahead, Jess.
I am going to go with Tulane. I think that better team. They're riding out this high, and I just don't have all the confidence in kind of UCF. Their only real big win is Cincinnati, and so outside of that, I just don't have a lot of confidence in UCF. I think Tulane has showed more throughout the season, and that's what I'm anticipating today. So I think it's gonna be a close game, but I think Tulane sneaks by. A lot of my scores are sitting in like the 30 range. It seems like today. So I'm going to go 34-27 that Tulane wins.
More brief on these guys. 1 or 2 sentences. Nope. Let's get moving.
No problem. This is a game I don't care about, but it's a game of the winner that might play Notre Dame in a New Year's 6. So this is interesting for that matter. I'll take the upset. UCF 27, Tulane 28. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I got the upset.
I went the other way. So Tulane by a point.
Oh, okay. Well, I do have the upset. I've got UCF winning 35-32.
All right.
How about TCU in Texas? 4th ranked TCU, number 18, Texas.
Texas isn't back yet. I'm surprised they're still ranked. So I have TCU continuing to run the ball successfully against Texas.
Okay.
I don't think Texas is back. I think they have a good offense. I think this will be a shootout, but I've got TCU winning 37-35. They should not be ranked, by the way, Texas.
I don't know why I'm just going to say Texas 38, TCU 34. I just feel like TCU,
Battle of Texas.
They get to that number 4 spot, so they're in college football playoff contention. The pressure starts to build now for an upstart, I think. So I like Texas pulling it off today. Final one. North Carolina at Wake Forest.
North Carolina is going this way. Wake Forest is going this way. So I think North Carolina wins this one. Again, I think it's going to be a shootout. That slow mesh ain't going to win you nothing. Yep. North Carolina 45, Wake Forest 42.
Yeah, I have this very high-scoring game. Wake Forest, took advantage of Clemson's secondary. I think North Carolina has a weaker defense. We saw Notre Dame put up a lot of points against them. This is going to be a shootout. But I think North Carolina gets it done 44-41. And I just want to give a shout out to Drake May here because he has better stats than CJ Stroud. And Stroud is considered the #1 Heisman candidate right now. He has more rushing yards, way more. He's like 500 rushing yards. He has more passing yards. He has more passing rushing touchdowns. I think that there should be a serious consideration for May in the Heisman chat this season.
I can't disagree with any of that, but because he plays for North Carolina and because Ohio State,
Notre Dame made both those quarterbacks look pedestrian.
They did.
FYI.
They did. I've got North Carolina winning 42-35. Guys, that's going to do it. Enjoyed it. 90 minutes plus flew by fast. That'll happen with 3 guys. Appreciate everyone for joining us this morning. We've got kickoff in less than a half an hour at this point. So we're going to wrap it up. Don't forget the post-game show afterwards. Brian is going to be there. Vince, of course, is going to be there. I think, will Ryan and Sean also be there, Vince?
I'm not sure. I asked. I didn't get a response. So
okay,
somebody's going to be there, and it'll be a lot of fun because we'll be celebrating a Notre Dame dominant victory.
All right. Enjoy the game. And, of course, we'll be back Monday as well with IB Nation Sports Talk. Guys, enjoyed it. I will talk to you later.